we find that a lot more businesses need great writing, and there aren't enough writers to go around, basically, is kind of what we hear in the field. Like, we just got a new client maybe a month ago, and they were telling us that this CEO and a bunch of other CEOs were talking about how they don't know where to go to find good writers.
Right about now. 1, 2, 3, hit man.
Right about now. Right about now. The Funk Soul Brother.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Right About Now podcast. I'm Jonathan Small, and happy holidays to you all. Today we're going to be talking about writing side hustles. And by side hustles, I mean freelance opportunities in addition to your full-time job to make some cash money. I know times are tough right now, and so I wanted to give some insights into how you might be able to write on the side and make some money. I'm starting to sound like an infomercial. This is not an infomercial, this is real. I actually do this. This podcast is a side hustle. Podcasting in general is a side hustle for me. As many of you know, I have my own podcasting production and consulting company called Strikefire Productions. Got a bunch of clients that I produce and host podcasts for, and it's been quite helpful in putting the food on the table. But I know a lot of you who are writers out there or creative types are looking for ways to make some extra money. The thing is, you have this unique skill, and it's something that people actually need. But sometimes you have to think a little bit out of the old paradigm, sort of get the thought of maybe writing a novel, writing an article for the New Yorker, these dreams we have, which are fantastic dreams, and we have to keep them. But they're not the only ways to get paid to write. So my guests today have found this exact formula for themselves. They are Alexander and Sarah Beth Lewis, and they run Lewis Commercial Writing, which is a business copywriting studio based out of Austin, Texas. And what started off as a side hustle for them has quickly become a very prolific and lucrative full-time endeavor. And they're going to talk about what it is that they have discovered and share it with you very generously. It is Thanksgiving. So they each have different specialties. Alexander is an expert in long-form content like ebooks and white papers, while Sarah Beth focuses on helping product teams improve the user experience. And together, they write what's called conversion-optimized website copy. And they specialize particularly in software companies, or SaaS. Now, if all this sounds like crazy lingo to you, we will explain it in the podcast, so don't get totally freaked out. The two are also a happily married couple. And I thought that was very interesting because we all know that couples that write together stay together. At least that's what I think. I don't know. So anyway, here is my very practical and informative, I hope, interview with Alexander and Sarah Beth Lewis. Alexander and Sarah Beth Lewis, welcome to the Right About Now podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, great to be here.
So great to have you guys. Before we get rolling here, I'd love to give people a sense of what you guys actually do, because I feel like your job is so kind of a new kind of way that writers make a living, and some of the terminology I don't even know. So I want you to, like when you talk about SaaS, I want you to talk about that. But tell me exactly what you guys do and like how your business works.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of people, when they think of getting paid to write, they think of selling their words to publications.
Right.
And we sell our words to businesses instead. So anything that you can think of a business needing, so from copy on their website to like articles on their blog, posts on their social media, all that stuff has to be written by somebody. And often businesses don't have enough people or enough time in their calendar to write it themselves. So they just outsource it to people like Sarah Beth and I.
It's a great niche. I mean, I feel like businesses have always looked for some help, but this is like understanding all the different platforms, right? And how to write for each of the different platforms that they need help on.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of different ways to think about it. You can think about it by writing by niche or writing by vertical. So there's people that specialize just in email and they just write marketing emails. And so for me, I've actually been really interested in writing for product. So that's like, if you open an app on your phone, 30 to 40% of the screen is actually text. And a lot of times there's like UX designers, people who are building these apps who they really don't care about the words at all. And so I've found a niche writing for product, and it's called content design or UX writing. And then Alex, like you were really interested in writing like long form, like ebooks. And so, you know, you go to a website, there's a pop-up that says, download our ebook, you know, it's maybe a report or an ebook or a white paper. So that's something you've really found that you love to write, is like that in-depth, long form marketing material.
Yeah. And then what we have in common is we both write what we call conversion copy, which is basically we follow certain formulas and write in a certain way that when someone lands on a website, they're more likely to make a purchase because of certain ways we write things and structure the content.
What's your background? How did you even learn about how to write in this way?
Yeah, for me, it began as a side hustle right after high school. I was working just kind of your normal like post-high school jobs, and a friend of mine got a job at a nonprofit. And immediately the person who hired him asked if he knew anyone who liked to write and was willing to just like volunteer on the side. And I, like many writers, just like grown up loving writing. And so when my friend mentioned that, I was like, sure, I'll volunteer, I'll help write. And then by writing for this nonprofit, other people started hearing, oh, he writes for this nonprofit. Maybe I can hire him to write my website copy or write this article for me. And so just kind of fell into this like world of side hustles where I could just kind of be paid hourly or by the project to write anything that a business might need. And then about 4 years ago, I decided to basically take that full time. And so started freelancing, and a year later, convinced Sarah Beth to join me as well.
So Sarah Beth, what's your background? Were you also writing on the side?
Yeah, so I was an English major at the University of Texas, Austin, and was on the track to like enter a PhD program in English. I was going to go the academic route. And it just felt like there wasn't a lot of life in academia. And I sensed the funding wasn't there. And just I started to second guess that choice. And I started to see what Alex was doing. We were dating at the time, and he needed some help editing some projects. He's writing a user manual for a tech startup here in town. He was like, hey, can you help? And so I jumped in and quickly like caught vision for what this could look like. Instead of writing, you know, in an academic sense, I started looking at how do you write for business? And it is a whole other set of skills, I'll say. I mean, I feel like the process for me has gone from writing very verbose, you know, these long, like a thesis, you know, it's like almost 100 pages of academic prose, to, for me, it's like, what's the perfect word to describe this label in a product? You know, like you need to enter your email, you need to enter all this information. What, you know, so it's like the tiniest bits.
Yeah, that's sometimes the hardest writing to do. I mean, I used to have to write like captions when I was first starting off in magazines, and I felt that to be much more challenging than writing like a 1,200 word feature when you're trying to like be really super concise. So tell me how you learned how to do this kind of writing. Did you teach yourself? Are there other places that is there like a guru of business copywriting that you turn to, or like, how did you learn?
For me, I started just on the internet. I just started Googling like how to write copy for websites, how to write a good article, stuff like that. And then through that, I think I started finding books on the subject. Like there's an author, Robert W. Bly, who's written like 40 books on the whole world of like freelancing and writing copy and writing white papers and all that different stuff. And so I started getting into his material, but there's a lot of people who write books like that. And there's like a lot of kind of gurus out there, people who just teach this. And so that's how I found it, was just Googling around, going to bookstores. It's one of those things where until you know that copywriting exists, you don't really see it anywhere. Like you don't see the word copywriting, you don't know it exists. And then as soon as you realize that it's a thing, it just kind of appears everywhere. You start noticing ad agencies. You go to the business section in bookstores and you realize, oh, there's actually a lot of content about how to write good copy, how to communicate with customers. It's a pretty well written about.
Yeah, but
field.
you definitely have that kind of conversational, like, you know, very concise, but kind of chatty way of explaining something. You know, is that something that you have just kind of integrated into your style? Is that something that you feel like is very effective, or does it? I guess it matters. It doesn't. It's different for each client, right?
Yeah. Well, it's Definitely, I would say kind of one of the core rules of copywriting is to write simply and to write short. Like there are some exceptions to that, but that's really the thing that you're most teaching yourself to do. Because like Sarah Beth was saying, how like in the academic world, you're used to writing a little more verbose, and even in like journalism and stuff like that, you're kind of expected to write at a higher level. And in copywriting, you're kind of more trying to write toward like a third or fourth grade level where someone can pick up the book and they're like in middle school and they can still understand what you're trying to communicate. And so that's always our goal. And one of the ways that we get to that is we will actually communicate with customers because they tend to know easier language than the customers that we're working for. So if we're writing website copy for a really technical product, instead of just speaking with the company themselves that we're working for, we'll ask if we can go directly to their customers so that we can interview them and see how the customer talks about that product. Because usually that's how you're going to skip all the jargon. You're going to avoid kind of all the internal kind of circular conversations that just happen in there that only that company is going to know. And you can just kind of cut through the chase and what do people consider the benefits and the like real features that are worth mentioning about a product.
So for us, I think we did train in the trenches. We didn't go through a formal copywriting course.
Right.
We did read a lot of different books. One of the first ones for me was Peter Bowerman's The Well-Fed Writer. He talks about this life where he's not a W-2 worker that works in-house, at a company, which is when I graduated college, exactly what I thought I had to do to be successful. Instead, he's working on a rolling basis with many different clients, working on really interesting different writing projects and getting paid on a rolling basis as well. And so he'll finish projects, start projects, and get paid at different times. And it just kind of really expanded my understanding of what, it could mean to be a writer for business.
One of the ones that really nails this idea of writing simply is called Everybody Writes by Anne Handley.
Yeah.
And that one, she really just covers in really simple prose, just how in kind of the modern world where like there's internet and people have to be or businesses have to be publishing all the time, it could be expected to write copy for their own company. And so she's just kind of teaching like, here's how you write simply, here's how you communicate hard ideas in short prose as opposed to just kind of like dragging on and on. And it's a really good introductory book to just writing at the level that people expect to find in the internet.
Yeah. And so early on, Alex, you mentioned that this is a side hustle, although now you guys have kind of turned it into it sounds like a full-time business. But I think what would be interesting, I think, to a lot of our listeners is that this is even an option. If you're a writer, again, like a lot of maybe think about it in a more traditional way, like I will pitch this story to a magazine or a website and hopefully I will get a response. And like, that's how I'm going to make a living. But this is sort of the stuff that you can do in between doing the writing that you want to be doing, unless you're just somebody who wants to do business copywriting all the time. And maybe those people, there's no offense to those people. There might be people who really love that. But this is a side hustle for you guys in that sense that you do your other stuff, right? What advice would you give to people to even find this kind of work?
Yeah. What's nice about freelancing, even if it's a part-time basis, is writing is a marketing form unto itself. And so the more you write, the more people realize that you write. And most people don't like to write. Most people find it a pain. And so if you're just showing that you like to write, people might come to you just because you have a blog, just because you're putting stuff on social media. And so that's one of the easiest ways, I would say, to kind of get started, is just to start publishing what you are already writing about online, and then tell your network that you're accepting writing projects. So when I decided to go full-time with freelancing, the first thing that I did was just send emails to people I knew who owned ad agencies. And both of them, within, I think, like 2 months, both of these friends sent me work. And so people, like, there's an endless need for content. And so starting within your network, because that trust gap is already kind of filled. People, you don't need to prove that you're a good writer. These people probably already have some amount of trust, or maybe have seen your writing before. And then posting on social media, and then seeing what other people might be posting on social media. So we've used LinkedIn quite a few times, where we'll just go to the search bar on LinkedIn and type in common phrases that we would expect someone to type in if they're trying to reach within their network to find a writer. So we'll type things like looking for a freelance copywriter, or looking for a white paper writer, or something like that. And then when we search, you can look by either, you can kind of look at it by either relevancy or by the date it was published. And if you go by the date it was published, you'll see sometimes a dozen or so things in the last week where just random people you don't know have just published, hey, I'm looking for a white paper writer, looking for someone to write my website copy. And you can just contact them on LinkedIn and reach out.
Yeah.
Another way is we had a good friend who was furloughed at the beginning of coronavirus, and she reached out and was like, hey, I actually really like writing. Is there a way I could, kind of start a side hustle in the meantime while I'm on furlough? And so we were kind of coaching her how to do that. What we said was, we really recommend you start with one of these sites like Upwork or Fiverr. Thumbtack is another one. That's kind of a, it's an aggregate site for these kind of gigs. So create your profile, start looking at gigs. The problem with these sites, right, and why people complain about them is because you're pitted right next to your competition. And so this drives prices down. And so I think it's a good place to start to kind of get your feet wet, see what kind of projects you like or don't like. Maybe white papers or ebooks is your thing, and maybe you hate them. So that's a good testing ground to just start getting projects on a part-time, side gig basis. And then as you build your profile and kind of figure out what you like, then you can start to professionalize, build that website, start to have a cohesive message about, what kind of a writer you are.
You mentioned prices, so I'm curious the sort of range here of what you guys can charge. In traditional freelance world, you used to get paid by the word, and it's the only one of the few markets where actually the cost per word has gone down over the last 20 years. I used to get paid $1.50 a word in the 90s, and now it's like 10 cents if you're lucky. So I'm wondering how you guys price stuff. It probably isn't by the word, it's a little bit by the project. So how do you guys even think about that?
The reason we don't charge by the hour or by the word is because we find that kind of pits us against our client unnecessarily, because it's in our best interest to rack up hours or to write long, because that means we get paid more, as opposed to our client is probably hoping that we don't take as many hours or that we write with brevity. And so even if we're trying to be in their best interest, there's this unnecessary friction there. And so by just charging by the project, we're able to just say, here's what we're willing to write this for. And then you can just kind of come to an agreement and it's settled. So that's why we charge the way that we charge. But as far as finding your rates, the thing to know about freelancing is that you're not going to ever be writing 40 hours a week. So you can't base your pricing on okay, if I'm able to get 40 hours a week divided and I want to make this much a year, you can't really do it that way, because you can only at a maximum probably get 4 to 5 hours on a really good day of actually concentrated work writing on something. So you have to think of it that way. And you also have to think of yourself as a business, because you're not just kind of falling down the line of expenses for a business. If you're getting paid $20 an hour working for a company, then for that company to make a profit on you working for them, there's all these other things that kind of come above your expense. They have to make a profit on you working for the business. And so you have to think of yourself not having that gap. You have to cover your own health insurance if you're full-time. You have to do, you have to expense any marketing that you're doing, hosting your website, all this stuff. So when you're thinking of how to charge, you have to not just go, okay, 40 hours a week divided by, you have to think of it kind of in terms of okay, how much would a business charge to offer this service? And that's what you need to.
Well, how do you have that sense of what a business would charge? Because a lot of people probably have no idea what businesses can even afford or how they work.
So to help anchor a little bit, right when we got started, I won a contract with a SaaS company writing their blog content.
Explain what SaaS is, by the way. What does SaaS stand for?
Oh, software as a service.
Okay.
Yeah, just to really quickly define that a little more for people. So if you think of a business when you go to a restaurant to go eat and someone uses a payment processor to charge your payment, the software they're using to charge your payment at the restaurant is a software as a service.
Okay.
And so there's individual companies sell to restaurants and sell to other businesses that they're literally just giving them a tool they can use to better serve their customers.
Yeah. So if you've ever used a project management software like Asana, that's classic.
All right. Thank you for clearing that up. But you were saying when you first started with the software as a service.
Yeah. So when I first started, I was charging $90 an hour. Mm-hmm. We don't recommend charging by hour. But you should know that, kind of what Alex is saying, that sounds like a lot, $90 per hour. Whoa.
Yeah.
But if you back up for a second, like Alex said, if you're charging $20 an hour and you're only able to put in maybe 5 hours,
Right.
that's a stretch. I mean, 3 to 4 hours really of focused client work a day, you're not going to make ends meet by the end of the day. And so, our evolution, we started there. So it was like $90 an hour. That's our going rate. And then what we realized was, again, you're pitted against the client. You're trying to, have as many hours as you can. And the client wants you to really be, quick about things. And we just don't like being on either sides of that equation. And so where we've landed is project-based pricing. And so what that means is basically, okay, it's a white paper and we kind of define scope. We figure out how long it, approximately they want it to be, how many pages. And then we set a project price. And as you go, you kind of learn what you're happy charging for a certain deliverable. And then as demand goes up, as more people inquire, you can raise your rates for that.
Right.
So there's kind of two ways to think about the fixed rates as well. So there's fixed rate just based on what would I be happy making on this project. And then there's also fixed rate based on the value that it offers to the business. And sometimes that's an easier way to charge the fees you should be charging as a freelancer, because the value-based really helps a business understand that you're helping them take risk off the table. Because I read the other day that Pepsi, when they redid their logo design, they spent $1 million on that logo design.
Wow.
And that's a lot of money. You could go on Upwork and find people to design a logo for $100, but they decided to go and spend $1 million. And that's because the risk of them having a bad logo or one that they put on all their products and then for some reason they have to take all down is much more expensive and hurts their brand a lot more than just paying the extra money up front and knowing that this logo is going to accomplish what it's meant to accomplish. And so as you start to get deeper into copywriting, so when you start, you're just going to be probably writing for the sake of writing because people just need to publish, they need to write articles, stuff like that. And so you'll just be helping them produce content. But the further you go into it and the kind of deeper you want to dive, you'll get closer and closer to the bottom line of a business and helping them improve sales. So I write a lot of lead magnets.
Yeah, explain what that is.
Yeah, a lead magnet is basically a piece of content typically, but it can be a discount or something like that, that basically when someone arrives on a website, a customer can choose to give that company their email in exchange for some kind of value. And so the company might be giving them a ebook that adds a lot of value or a checklist that helps them accomplish something they're trying to get done. Might be get 20% off your next order by giving us your email. And this basically is building kind of a relationship where the sales team or the marketing team can then email that customer with future promotions or with a newsletter, something like that. And so having a really high value lead magnet that really connects with the customer is a great way to get a lot more leads and potentially really increase the sales for that company. And so that's one way where if okay, if I write a really high value white paper, in software, there might be a software that sells for $3,000 a pop or something like that. And so a really compelling white paper, even if it gets you 2 or 3 more sales than a less compelling white paper, that's worth a lot of money to that company because suddenly they're getting thousands more dollars in sales. And so you can kind of anchor what you're offering to the value it's going to offer the business. And so in kind of the conversion copywriting world where you're going onto a website and you're tweaking certain things or rewriting the copy to make sure that people who come to the website are more likely to buy or more likely to sign up for something, then you can charge more for that because you're driving more customers.
Right. I guess from being in this long enough, what is going to earn them a high ROI. So you can price your own thing accordingly. What is the big ticket item for you? What is the assignment you get that tends to pay the best?
I'd probably say website copy.
Yeah, we also work on retainer model. So, a big company like AppSumo, it's one of our longest standing clients. We've worked with them month over month. And so I think that ongoing retainer where it's X amount of money.
When I was freelancing, that was kind of my dream. Whenever you have those retainers, when you have like a monthly check coming in, there's nothing, it's so unpredictable, the freelance life. So it's nice to know, oh, I'm going to be making such and such amount of money every month. But explain what AppSumo is. AppSumo is kind of new to my world. I only found it because they have good search optimization. And when you're looking for like how to grow from 1,000 to 10,000 listeners on your podcast, whatever it is, they usually come up pretty high in search. But so explain what AppSumo is exactly.
Yeah. So AppSumo is kind of like an entrepreneur's number one top secret, I think, because it's a marketplace where you can get these SaaS tools, these software, various software for typically a lot less. And so it's a lifetime deal. So you buy it once and you can have access to it forever. So like, for instance, in 2011, Zapier, which is it's a workflow automation tool that helps you just automate stuff in your business. Zapier was on AppSumo. And so had you gotten it then, you would have free, you wouldn't be paying this monthly subscription. You would have this software forever, which is really amazing. And they also have this marketplace where people, like you or us, we could launch tools as well. It's kind of a newer side of the business, which I'm really excited about. Is it's not just these SaaS companies that are launching deals now, it's people like us. So it's kind of opening up and changing the game for how entrepreneurs buy and sell tools and content.
How do you guys keep up with all this kind of new jargon and the way people are converting sales now? And how do you find it hard to sort of keep up with the sort of lingo, and not only the lingo, but just the different ways that, because the business has changed so much even in the last 5 years with social media and all the different, tools like an AppSumo that have come into the marketplace. So how do you guys kind of know what you're talking about?
Yeah. I feel like just staying really connected. I mean, I think LinkedIn is really key for me. I know Twitter, I can't handle Twitter, but Alex, Twitter is really important for you. And then I think the client relationships we have, where we just, with AppSumo, seeing all the tools that come through the store and just paying attention, keeping that pulse. We are self-taught. I mean, I think we learned in the trenches. We learned by experience. We learned by doing 40 to 60 hours of labor every week for years, to learn what people respond to.
I think it's mostly just been immersion. Just like you would learn French or Spanish, if you are just in the business world, kind of speaking this language every day, you just kind of pick up on the terms, you pick up on the acronyms, and it just happens through conversation. 2 or 3 years ago, we often would have to while we're on calls with clients, just be Googling terms, what do they mean by that? Just so we're following what they're talking about or what they are asking of us. And now we very seldom run into that just because we're part of this every day. And so I think it just comes with time. It helps to read within the field. So if we have our niche in SaaS, we've talked about, but if your niche was going to be healthcare or some other technology or real estate or something like that, just following the magazines, following the top articles, and just seeing what the conversation is like and knowing kind of what the latest news is in your field, I think is really helpful as well.
I'd mention 2 resources. One is Unbounce. They publish a yearly conversion benchmark report for different industries. That's really helpful. You just give them your email and then you download it and you can see what kind of conversion rates are mid-tier, high, and low for different industries. So if you own a certain business and you're interested in kind of optimizing your website and seeing the different technologies that are coming for helping, businesses sell more online, this is a great resource. And then for me, the Inside Intercom podcast the podcast and the blog, both are really helpful just for, staying fresh on a lot of this stuff, just, marketing and optimizing your website and understanding, the technologies that are coming out that are helping businesses be more effective online.
So where are the burgeoning opportunities right now in your line of work that if somebody was getting started now, they might want to focus on?
Yeah, we see this as a total blue ocean. As many people as can get into this, go for it. We kind of joke that so many people want to be poets or novelists and supply and demand, right? There's not the demand there. But with business writing, absolutely, it's the inverse. There's businesses are constantly looking for people who can reliably bring writing expertise to the game. So
Yeah.
I would say there's kind of within copywriting, there's two big niches. There's content marketing, which is writing the blogs. Blogging has really become so key because businesses just want to keep that fresh content and want to get organic traffic. Like you said, you found AppSumo that way.
Yeah.
We help them birth their blog basically. We started in early 2019. Yeah, their traffic is way up. And so there's content marketing, and then there's copywriting, which is more of, the website or sales materials, email, things like that.
Yeah. And just to kind of go even deeper on one of the points Sarah Beth just made is we find that a lot more businesses need great writing, and there aren't enough writers to go around, basically, is kind of what we hear in the field. Like, we just got a new client maybe a month ago, and they were telling us that this CEO and a bunch of other CEOs were talking about how they don't know where to go to find good writers. And these were pretty big companies. And so it's like, even these big companies, like, there's this huge, like you were saying, a lot of people go to write novels and poems and all that. And I think that's good, and it's helpful to do that just to practice your writing. But I think where the money is, if you can learn how to market yourself and all that, is to learn how to find these businesses and write for them.
Well, what's fascinating is there's, US-based businesses, but, a lot of our clients are international.
Yeah.
So if you're a huge software company in Asia and you're trying to expand to the US, you need writers who can, connect with that audience. And
Do you find now that most of your business comes from people finding you, or do you still have to look for business?
Almost all of our business at this point comes through either referral or people coming to us through Google or social media. That really, I think that switched 2 years ago, like a year and a half to 2 years ago. What really helped with that actually was niching down. So when I started freelancing full time, I was just writing for anybody and everybody who wanted something written. And so it was real estate companies, it was clothing brands, and anything that I could write.
Yeah.
And then after Sarah Beth joined, we realized that two big categories we were writing for were real estate and technology. So then we niched way down and just did those two. And then maybe 3 or 4 months later, we niched fully down into just software as a service, because that was some of our favorite clients. And every time we've niched down, within 3 weeks to a month, our business goes up quite a bit. And so the more you focus, the more you become an expert to the people who are in a certain field, the more your demand is going to grow, has been our experience.
Yeah. Well, this is so interesting. It's it's a very 2020, 2021 conversation. I feel like you guys are the future of writing. So
I feel like we should be beep, beep,
I know, beep,
like,
beep, beep.
we're
I am the
robots.
future. Well, at least you aren't robots and you aren't AI. You're still real people, which is great.
Right?
So if people want to find out more about you, how can they do so?
Yeah, well, our website is lewiscommercialwriting.com. And by the time this goes live, I have a guide that I'm going to publish called Who Pays for Words. And it's just going to be a list of different ways you can write copy. We've mentioned a few, UX writing, copywriting, but there's also things like ghostwriting, social media writing. There's so many categories. And so if anyone wants to find that, download that, that'll be at our website, lewiscommercialwriting.com.
So cool. I want that. Who doesn't want to find out who's paying for words? Better than widgets. Words are great. Well, thank you for doing this interview, and it's super fascinating. Alex and Sarah Beth Lewis, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having us.
Well, that is our show. Thank you so much for listening. Hey, if you enjoy this podcast, do me a solid, will you? Go to the Apple Podcast page and give me a rating. If you're feeling even more generous, write a review. It seems like a small thing, but it can go a really long way in helping me get this podcast out there and spread the love. Just go to Apple Podcasts, click on the stars, and write a quick and loving review. And who knows, maybe even in the next podcast, I'll call you out and give you a little props. Have a great week, everyone. And remember to do the right thing